They thought I was finished. Old bones. Shaky hands. Easy prey. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. And when my own blood tried to steal the roof I built with these hands, I swore I'd bury them with the truth. It started on a Tuesday night. I just wiped the grease off my palms after fixing the water heater when the knock came. My son, Daniel, standing there with his wife, Carla, and the kids in tow. Bags in their hands. No warning. "Dad," he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world, "we're moving in." Not asking. Not if it's okay. Just a statement, thrown into the air like I didn't exist. They walked past me before I could answer. Carla's heels clicking across my kitchen tiles like gunshots. She opened my fridge and started rearranging things, pushing aside my milk, my leftovers, stuffing in her brand-name juices and organic nonsense. The kids dumped toys on the living room floor. Bright plastic clashed with the smell of machine oil and old leather. My leather recliner, the one I'd sat in every night after 12-hour shifts, suddenly had a juice box balanced on the armrest. I stood there, gripping the rag in my hand so tight the fabric tore. "Excuse me." My voice was flat, still cold. Daniel didn't even look up from his phone. "Relax, Dad. It's easier this way. You don't need all this space. And with your age, it makes sense." Carla laughed under her breath. "We'll help you, of course. Take care of the bills, the house. You can just enjoy retirement." Enjoy. Like I was supposed to enjoy being erased in my own home. I forced myself to stay calm. "You have your own apartment." Daniel finally met my eyes, and there it was, that smirk. The one I used to slap off his face when he was 16 and thought rules didn't apply to him. "We don't, actually. Not anymore." He pulled a folded paper from his pocket, smoothed it on the counter. Legal letterhead. My own signature staring back at me. Deed transfer. For a moment, I thought my chest might crack open. I'd signed that paper 6 months ago, thinking it was insurance paperwork Daniel shoved under my nose. My glasses were in the shop, my head heavy from a bad cold. I didn't look twice. I trusted my own son. Now it was a weapon pressed against my throat. Carla leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. "Technically, this house is ours now. But of course, you can stay. As long as you follow the rules." The rag dropped from my fist. My hands shook, not from age, but from rage. Rules. My rules built this roof. My sweat poured this foundation. My back broke laying these floors. And my son was telling me his rules. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and hit the like button. Your support helps us bring you even more incredible stories. I looked at the photos on the wall. My late wife, smiling in the backyard we planted together. Daniel at 10 years old, baseball glove in hand, proud of the new bike I'd built from scrap parts. I'd given him everything. Every dollar, every hour, every ounce of strength. And here he was, robbing me blind with my own trust. I didn't argue. Didn't shout. I just nodded once, slow. "All right." Daniel smirked again, mistaking silence for defeat. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the cracked ceiling I'd patched with my own hands years ago. Their voices drifted down the hall. Carla laughing, Daniel bragging about the deal of a lifetime. I closed my eyes. I let their words cut deep, let the anger settle into something colder, sharper. They thought they'd beaten me. Thought the old man wouldn't notice, wouldn't fight back. But I wasn't finished. And when I was done, they'd wish they'd never stepped foot in this house. The first move came sooner than they expected. Carla knocked on my door the next morning without waiting for an answer. She barged in, perfume thick and sour, wrinkling her nose at the smell of motor oil and dust. "Daniel says you need to start giving us your pension check. Bills are higher now. Fair's fair." She said it like she was asking for a cup of sugar. Like it wasn't my sweat they were draining. I just stared at her until her smile faltered. Then I said, "We'll see." She huffed, slammed the door, stomped away. And I smiled, alone in my room. Because I already knew every rule they set, every demand they threw at me, every lie they believed I swallowed, I was recording it all. Collecting it. Stacking it like kindling. One spark and the fire would burn them to ashes. That evening, I watched Daniel carry in boxes from the car. labeled casino loans debts. He tried to hide them in the garage. He didn't know I was watching through the crack in the blinds. So that was it. My house wasn't just a home. It was collateral. My son hadn't stolen for me to live better. He'd stolen to pay for his own ruin. I leaned back from the window, my jaw tight. This wasn't just betrayal. This was war. And I'd already decided I was going to win. Mornings smelled different. Not coffee, not bacon. Carla's perfume and Daniel's aftershave had seeped into my kitchen. My house didn't smell like mine anymore. It smelled like trespassers. Like rot. Daniel sat at my table in his undershirt, scrolling his phone, sipping coffee from my mug. My mug, the chipped one my wife gave me for our 30th anniversary. He didn't notice me staring. He was too busy laughing at some gambling for him. I poured myself black coffee, no sugar, no milk. My eyes stayed on him. "You've got a problem," I said flatly. He smirked without looking up. "You've got plenty of those, Dad. Age, bills, memory. Pick one." I set my cup down hard. Ceramic cracked on ceramic. He finally glanced up. I saw it in his face. He thought I was bluffing, that I'd fold like always. "You've got debts," I said, voice steady, slow. "Big ones. And you used my house to cover them." Carla waltzed in, robe tied loose, holding one of my wife's old plates stacked with toast. "So? You should be thanking us. At least the house is safe." Daniel handled it. I barked a laugh. Short. Sharp. Safe? For who? Her smirk slipped. Daniel's jaw tightened. They didn't like that tone. The old man wasn't supposed to bite. I leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Listen carefully. You live under my roof. You breathe my air. You think you own me because of one piece of paper. But I see everything. And I don't forget." Daniel chuckled, forced, trying to turn the tide. "Dad, relax. You're worked up. We'll sort it out." I pushed my chair back. Stood. "No. I'll sort it out." The moment they left to run errands, I got to work. Garage first. I moved slow, steady, like I always did fixing engines. Opened their boxes. Debt notices. Credit collectors. Letters stamped and read. His casino loyalty card tucked inside. Every scrap told the same story. Daniel was drowning, and he tied my house around his neck like an anchor. I photographed everything with my old flip phone. Blurry, but enough. Next, the kitchen drawer. Carla wasn't careful. Receipts for designer shoes, beauty salons, $1,000 handbags. Paid with cards linked to my address. She was bleeding me dry to look like royalty in a house she didn't even build. Every paper went into a folder marked with a name I hadn't used in years. Evidence. At dinner, I played the fool. Sat silent while Carla prattled about new curtains. Nodded while Daniel promised he'd take care of the bills. But my recorder was running in my pocket. Cheap little thing I'd bought back when the union fights were ugly. Still worked fine. "You'll get his pension soon," Carla whispered to Daniel when she thought I'd dozed off. "He's too tired to fight." "I'll bleed him dry before he knows what's happening," Daniel muttered back. Click. Evidence saved. Later that night, I stood in the garage under the single hanging bolt. The smell of gasoline, dust, iron. My old world. My safe place. I spread the photos, receipts, recordings across my workbench like a war map. Piece by piece, the picture sharpened. They thought they'd tricked me. Thought the old man was losing his grip. But I was steady. I was focused. And I was 2 steps ahead. The next morning, Daniel swaggered into the garage while I was tinkering with my old toolbox. "You need to start trusting me," he said, casual, leaning against the door frame. "I'll handle the important stuff from now on." I turned, wiped grease from my hands, looked him dead in the eye. "Trust you," I said, voice like gravel. "I wouldn't trust you to hold a flashlight." For the first time, his smile cracked. Just a hair. Good. He was starting to see it. That night, I called an old friend, a retired cop who owed me a favor. His voice came through the crackling line. "You sure you want to go down this road, Frank?" he asked. I looked at the wall where my wife's picture hung. Her smile, frozen in time, like she knew I'd be here one day. "Yeah," I said. "I'm sure. It's time they learned who they're dealing with." And I hung up. Because my first strike was coming. And it was going to hurt. The first hit had to be quiet. Not fists, not shouting. Quiet. Precise. That's how you cut deeper. At breakfast, Daniel dropped an envelope on the table. Property tax bill, he said. It's higher this year. You'll cover it with your pension. We'll pay you back. Pay me back. The words stink. He wasn't planning to pay me anything. I slid the envelope closer, nodding like a beaten man. Of course. My voice low, flat. He smirked, satisfied. What he didn't see, my recorder, already running, capturing every word. When they left for grocery shopping, I drove my old Ford down to City Hall. The engine coughed, but it still ran. Like me. Not dead yet. The clerk, a young man in a cheap tie, barely looked up when I placed the supposed tax bill on the counter. 5 minutes later, he confirmed what I already suspected. Fraud. The envelope wasn't from the city. It was a fake. My own son had printed it on his home computer, even forged the seal. Sir, do you want us to file a report? The clerk asked. I shook my head. Not yet. Reports were public. Reports warned the enemy. I wanted Daniel blind. Just make me a copy for my records, I said. My voice steady as steel. The copy went into the evidence folder. Another nail in their coffin. That evening, when Carla bragged about how she'd saved money by switching the utilities into my name, I played dumb. Nodded. Smiled. Let her talk. She didn't notice I'd already pulled the records from the utility company that morning. Her name, her signature, my address. Forgery stacked on forgery. Dad, don't worry, Daniel said. We'll take care of everything. You just relax. Relax. He wanted me sedated. A ghost in my own home. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. And I smiled. The next day I made my move. Not on them, on their audience. See, parasites only thrive if people believe their lies. I decided to cut off that oxygen. I visited my neighbor, Mrs. Turner. 80 years old, sharp as broken glass, runs the neighborhood watch. Gossip travels through her faster than any internet feed. I leaned on her fence while she watered her roses. Told her just enough. Not the whole story. Just a taste. Strange things happening at my place, Margaret, I said. Bills arriving that aren't real. Utilities switched without my say. Funny, huh? Her eyes narrowed behind her glasses. Who'd do such a thing? I let silence hang. Then I muttered, not strangers. That was all she needed. By sunset, half the block was whispering. By tomorrow, the other half would be watching Daniel and Carla like hawks. They didn't know it yet, but I just poisoned their will. That night, Daniel stormed into my room, red in the face. What did you say to Turner? She gave Carla a dirty look in the driveway. I stared at him, calm as stone. Nothing but the truth. His nostrils flared. He wanted to explode, but he didn't. He couldn't. Not yet. He slammed the door on his way out. The frame rattled, dust falling from the ceiling. I smiled in the dark. My first strike had landed. Later, in the garage, I laid out the folder. Fake tax bill, utility records, recorded conversations, photos of their debt boxes. Piece by piece, the puzzle was almost complete. I whispered to the empty room, "Not much longer, sweetheart." My wife's picture watched from the wall, her eyes steady, her smile soft. Daniel thought he owned this house. Thought he owned me. He didn't realize I was already pulling the floor out from under him. And the next step wouldn't be quiet. The next step would draw blood. Quiet strikes rattled them. But now it was time for something louder. Something they couldn't ignore. I waited until Friday night. Payday. Daniel came home smelling like liquor and failure, Carla trailing behind with shopping bags she hadn't paid for. They were laughing too loud, the kind of laughter people use to drown off fear. Perfect. Dad, Daniel said, dropping his jacket on the couch, next week we'll need your pension check up front. We're restructuring some payments. Restructuring. Another lie. He meant he'd blown more money and needed me to bleed. I leaned back in my chair, watching them dump groceries onto my counter. My counter, my house, my air. You won't get a cent, I said, voice flat as iron. Silence fell like a hammer. Carla froze mid-unpack. Daniel blinked. What did you just say? You heard me. Carla's voice went shrill. Don't start this, Frank. We own this house. You think anyone believes your version of things? You're a lonely old man. You'll be in a nursing home by summer. I stood slow, every joint screaming, but my voice was steady. Try me. Then I walked to the garage, left them stewing. The next morning, I drove to the bank with the folder under my arm. Tax forgery, utility fraud, recorded threats, enough to bury them. The manager, an old acquaintance from my union days, skimmed through the documents, shaking his head. Frank, this is criminal. We can freeze anything tied to your property until an investigation clears it. Do it, I said. My tone brooked no argument. Within an hour, Daniel's accounts were locked. Carla's shiny credit cards stopped working mid-checkout. By noon, I knew the first domino had fallen. That evening, they stormed into the kitchen. Daniel's face was flushed, Carla's eyes wild. What the hell did you do? Daniel slammed his fist on the table. My cards aren't working. The bank says there's an investigation. I sipped my coffee. Calm. Measured. Strange. Maybe you should ask yourself why. Carla lunged forward. You're destroying us. I leaned in close, so close she could smell the coffee on my breath. No, you destroyed yourselves. I'm just showing everyone the truth. Daniel's fists shook. For a second, I thought he'd swing. But then he saw the recorder on the table, the red light blinking. He froze. Smart boy. Too late. That night, voices echoed down the hallway. Carla sobbing, Daniel pacing. They're all watching us, she hissed. Turner's telling people we're thieves. What if he really has proof? He's bluffing, Daniel growled. Old man's playing games. Tomorrow we push harder. He'll break. I smiled in the dark. Let them plan. Let them tighten their own noose. Because tomorrow I wasn't playing games anymore. Tomorrow I'd rip the floor out from under them publicly. Saturday morning, I made sure every neighbor was in earshot. I carried their debt boxes, letters, receipts, casino stubs out to the driveway and dropped them hard on the concrete. Papers spilled everywhere. Neighbors stopped mowing lawns. Dogs barked. Curtains twitched. Daniel burst from the front door, red-faced, shouting, Dad, what the hell are you doing? I raised a single letter high, bold print screaming delinquent. Final notice. This, I said, my voice cutting the air like a blade, is who you are. A liar. A thief. A parasite. You tried to bleed me dry. Now everyone sees what you really are. Gasps. Murmurs. Whispers spreading faster than wildfire. Daniel lunged forward, but Carla grabbed his arm, panic in her eyes. Not here. They're watching. Exactly. I dropped the letter onto the pile at my feet. Looked Daniel dead in the eyes. This was my house before you. And it'll be my house after you. You just don't know it yet. His face went pale. For the first time, I saw it fear. And it tasted sweet. Fear had cracked Daniel's mask, but I needed more. A crack wasn't enough. I wanted collapse. Sunday morning, I made my move. Drove the Ford down to the sheriff's office. My old friend, Deputy Mark Riley, was on duty. We'd fought fires together 30 years back before he swapped the helmet for a badge. I slid the folder across his desk. Fake tax bill. Utility fraud. Recorded threats. And this, I handed him a USB stick. Conversations. Clear as day. He leaned back, jaw tight. Frank, this isn't just family drama. This is felony fraud. Good, I said. My voice was flat, heavy. Then treat it like that. He nodded. You understand once this goes in the system, it's out of your hands? That's the idea, I said. By Monday, the storm broke. Daniel's boss called the house. Loud enough I could hear every word through the thin kitchen wall. Don't bother showing up, Daniel. I can't have an employee under investigation for fraud. Carla's shriek echoed through the hall. You promised me this was handled. You said your father was senile. I sat in my chair, sipping black coffee, the taste bitter and perfect. Daniel burst into my room. Eyes wild, fists clenched. You ruined my job. I didn't flinch, just stared. No, son, you did that yourself. I just held up a mirror. He cursed, slammed the door so hard the frame split. The neighborhood turned colder by the hour. Mrs. Turner accidentally told the mailman everything. By evening, even the kids across the street whispered when Carla stormed out to the car. Parasites can't live without hosts. And I'd cut off their supply. That night, I heard them fighting in the kitchen. Their voices hard, sharp. "Carla, we need cash now. If your father won't hand it over, we take it. Daniel, he's on to us. He's got recordings. We can't risk it. Carla, then make him disappear. He's old. One fall down the stairs and nobody asks questions." The words stabbed deep, but I stayed still. Didn't even breathe. The recorder under my pillow caught every syllable. They wanted me dead. My own blood. Good. Now I had the final piece. At dawn, I called Riley again. Met him at the diner, slid the fresh recording across the table. He listened, face pale. "Frank, this isn't fraud anymore. This is conspiracy. Attempted murder if you push it." I stirred my coffee slow. "Push it." He looked at me. "You're really going to bury your own son?" I met his eyes steady. "He's not my son anymore. He made that choice." When I came home, Daniel and Carla were waiting in the living room. Faces tight, eyes hollow. Daniel tried for a smile. "Dad, we've been thinking. Maybe we started off wrong. We can figure this out. Together." I let silence hang. Then, no. I already figured it out. Without you. Their faces drained. They didn't know the sheriff was already circling. I walked past them, slow, steady, unshaken. And for the first time, they didn't follow. Because they felt it too. The ground under their feet was already gone. The morning was too quiet. No birds on the line. No kids screaming on bikes. Just that heavy kind of silence that means something's coming. I was out front trimming the hedges, sweat running down my back, when the rumble of a cruiser broke the air. Sheriff Riley's car, blue and white paint catching the early sun. He pulled up slow, but the sound of gravel crunching under his tires was loud enough to turn every head on the street. Within seconds, doors creaked open up and down the block. Neighbors spilled out, coffee mugs in hand, robes still tied, sandals slapping on the pavement. Mrs. Turner stood on her porch in her housecoat, watering can still dripping from her hand. Kids pressed faces against windows. Everyone felt it. Today wasn't normal. The cruiser rolled to a stop in front of my driveway. Riley stepped out, broad shoulders under that tan uniform, badge glinting like a coin in the sun. Another deputy climbed out on the other side. They didn't come here to talk. They came to take. The front door of my house banged open. Daniel staggered out first, barefoot, hair sticking up, eyes still puffy from a hangover. Carla followed in her silk robe, the cheap perfume hitting the air before her voice did. Both of them blinking in the sun like rats dragged from a sewer. Riley's voice cut through the silence. Deep, steady. "Mr. Doyle," he called, but his eyes weren't on me. They were locked on my son. "We're here with a warrant." The street tightened, like everyone sucked in the same breath. Daniel spread his arms, half laughing, half shaking. "A warrant? For what?" "This is my house." I saw his hands twitch. Not steady. Not confident. He knew. Deep down, he knew. Riley didn't blink. Fraud. Forgery. Attempted extortion. And he pointed toward Carla, conspiracy to commit elder abuse. The crowd gasped. I could hear it low, like wind rushing through dry leaves. A dog barked once, then fell silent again. Carla shrieked, the sound cutting sharp enough to make a baby cry across the street. "That's insane. He's old. He doesn't know what he's saying. You can't trust him. He's confused." I dropped the clippers, wiped sweat from my brow, and stepped forward. "Play the tape, Sheriff." Riley didn't need more. He pulled a small recorder from his chest pocket. The click echoed like a gunshot. Then my driveway filled with the sound of their own voices. Carla's voice, cold as ice, then make him disappear. Daniel's reply, low and certain, "He's old." One fall down the stairs and nobody asks questions. It was like the whole neighborhood froze. Every lawn mower went silent. Every whisper stopped. Just that tape, my son and his wife planning my murder, blasting out into the summer air. Gasps broke first. Then murmurs. A woman on the sidewalk muttered, "Oh my God." Someone else whispered, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that?" Daniel's skin drained white. He stumbled back a step, eyes darting like a trapped animal. Carla shook her head violently, clutching her robe tighter. That's taken out of context. You twisted it. He twisted it. But nobody believed her. You can't twist a voice that steady, that cruel. Riley stepped forward, cuffs ready. His deputy mirrored him on the other side. Context won't save you. Hands behind your back. Both of you. Daniel snarled, lunging toward me, spit flying from his lips. You did this. You destroyed your own family. I didn't move. Didn't blink. My shadow cut long across the driveway, sharp under the morning sun. No, Daniel. You destroyed it. I just showed the world. The deputy grabbed him, twisted his arms back, metal cuffs biting his wrists. The sound of steel snapping shut rang louder than any church bell. Carla thrashed, hair wild, shrieking at the neighbors, "This is a mistake. You know us, you know me. He's senile. He's lying." But nobody met her eyes. They looked at me, at the man she'd called senile, and they nodded. Quiet, grim nods that told her exactly where she stood. Riley pinned her against the cruiser, slapped cuffs on her wrists. She cried out, voice breaking, "Frank, please. We're family." I stepped closer, close enough to see the sweat rolling down her cheek. My voice cut like a blade. Family doesn't plan to bury me under my own stairs. The deputy shoved her into the back seat. Daniel was already inside, head bowed, wrists locked behind him. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. Smaller than when he was 10 years old, standing in the outfield too scared to catch a ball. The cruiser doors slammed shut. Sirens screamed alive, red and blue lights flashing across the siding of my house, across the stunned faces of my neighbors. The cars rolled forward, dust kicking up behind them. And then they were gone. Before I'll tell you what happened next, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Thank you. The silence they left was thick, heavy. My neighbors stared. No one moved at first. Then Mrs. Turner stepped forward, her voice shaking, but loud enough for the block to hear. "Good for you, Frank." About time somebody stood up. Another neighbor muttered, "Never trusted that boy." A third crossed himself like he'd just witnessed an exorcism. Some clapped. Some shook their heads. But all of them looked at me differently. Not like an old man. Not like a victim. But like someone who'd just won a war on his own front lawn. I wiped sweat from my forehead, picked up the hedge clippers, and went back to trimming. Like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't just burned my own son's life down in front of everyone. But as the blade snapped through branches, my thoughts sharpened with them. Arrests weren't enough. Jail spits men out. Parasites always find new hosts. I didn't want them just behind bars. I wanted them ruined, forgotten, left with nothing but the taste of ash. That night, I sat at my kitchen table. The evidence folder lay open, papers spread like cards in a dealer's hand. My recorder still blinked red. The air smelled of coffee and oil from the garage, and faintly of victory. But victory wasn't finished. Not yet. I stared at my wife's picture on the wall. Her smile steady, eyes locked on me. I could almost hear her voice. "Don't let them walk away half hurt. End it." And that's when I knew. The arrests were only the beginning. The real ruin, the final strike, was still in my hands. The arrests weren't the end. They were the prelude. I knew it, Riley knew it. Hell, even Daniel knew it when the cruiser door slammed on him. Jail spits people back out. Parasites wriggle free. No, I wanted something sharper. Permanent. 2 days later, I walked into the courthouse. Old boots echoing on polished marble, folder tucked under my arm. The building smelled of coffee, bleach, and nervous sweat. I'd been here before, years back, testifying in a union case. Different fight. Same stink of people lying to save their skins. At the clerk's window, I slid the folder across. Every piece of evidence I'd built, forged tax bill, fake utility switches, recordings, debt papers, and most lethal of all, the late-night whisper about making me disappear. "File it all," I said. My voice came out like gravel. The clerk nodded, eyes widening as she skimmed the pages. "This will go straight to the DA." You understand this could escalate to felony charges. That's the point. By Friday, the storm broke again. Only this time, it wasn't sirens, it was headlines. Local man, wife face fraud, elder abuse charges. Neighborhood hero exposes family scam. The newspaper printed Daniel's mugshot right under the headline. My son, looking less like a man and more like a cornered rat. Carla beside him, eyes red, makeup streaked. I bought 3 copies. Kept one for myself, slipped the other 2 into the mailboxes of neighbors who doubted me. By noon, the block was buzzing. Folks pointed, whispered, crossed the street when Carla's sister came by to pick up their kids. Reputation gone. But I wasn't finished. I called Riley. What about his debts? The casinos? The lenders? Riley sighed. That's a different mess. State can only do so much. I leaned forward in my chair, gripping the receiver tight. Give me names. There was a pause. Then his voice dropped low. Frank, you sure? Names, I repeated. When he hung up, I had a list. People Daniel owed. People nastier than me, nastier than the law. That evening, Carla came back to the house. I found her in the driveway, mascara smeared, clutching a bag of clothes. Frank, please. Her voice shook. I didn't mean any of it. I was scared. Daniel pushed me. I stared at her. You told him to push me down the stairs. Tears welled. She reached out like I might take her hand. I didn't move. You wanted my pension, my house, my life. You thought I was weak. I stepped closer, my voice cold enough to freeze blood. You're done here. Don't come back. Her face crumpled. She backed away, sobbing, then fled down the street. Neighbors watched from their porches. Not one invited her in. That night, I opened my garage, sat at the workbench under the single bolt, papers spread like war plans. Daniel and Carla weren't just losing the neighborhood. They were losing everything. Because tomorrow, the hammer would fall. I'd already contacted a lawyer. Civil suits for damages. Eviction papers filed. Their accounts frozen. Their credit poisoned. And thanks to Riley's list, the very people Daniel had borrowed from would soon be knocking. This wasn't about jail time anymore. This was about stripping them to the bone. Saturday morning, I walked out onto the porch with the newspaper folded under my arm. Mrs. Turner waved from across the street. You did it, Frank, she called. I nodded once, eyes steady. Not yet, but soon. Because the final strike was ready. And when it landed, Daniel and Carla wouldn't just be behind bars or buried in debt. They'd be erased. The courthouse smelled of dust and coffee when I walked in for the last time. Same boots, same folder under my arm. But this time it wasn't evidence I carried, it was judgment. Daniel sat at the defense table, jaw clenched, eyes darting anywhere but me. His hair was greasy, shirt wrinkled. Carla sat beside him, pale and hollow, her nails chewed down to the quick. They looked smaller now, shrunk, like the lies had drained them dry. The judge flipped through my folder, page after page of their scans. The forged tax bill, the fake utility transfers, the recordings, Carla whispering about pushing me down the stairs, Daniel promising to bleed me dry. Each page slammed onto the bench like a hammer blow. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors, reporters, even strangers who'd read the headlines. I sat in the front row, still as stone, eyes locked on the 2 people who once called themselves my family. The judge's voice was iron. This court finds the defendants guilty of fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. Carla whimpered. Daniel muttered something under his breath, fists clenched, but it didn't matter. The words were carved in stone now. The judge continued, property deed will be restored to its rightful owner. Financial restitution to be pursued. Custody of the children suspended pending investigation. The last blow hit hardest. Carla sobbed loud enough to echo. Daniel's head snapped toward her, rage and panic spilling across his face. But it was useless. The gavel cracked down. Done. Afterward, outside on the courthouse steps, microphones shoved toward my face. Reporters shouting. Mr. Doyle, how does it feel to see justice served? Do you have anything to say to your son? What's next for you? I stared past them, out over the crowd. Neighbors craned to see me. Mrs. Turner nodded once, firm. My voice was calm, cold, final. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd roll over. They thought blood meant loyalty. I paused, letting the silence sharpen. But family isn't who shares your name. Family is who doesn't bury you alive. The reporters scribbled. Cameras clicked. But I wasn't speaking for them. I was speaking for myself. For my wife, whose picture still hung on my wall. For every sleepless night I'd spent thinking I was alone. I turned and walked down the courthouse steps, slow, steady, the sun hot on my shoulders. Behind me, Daniel shouted something: rage, threats, nonsense. I didn't turn, because it was finished. The house was mine. My name cleared. Their faces plastered in shame across every paper in town. And for the first time in years, I breathed easy. At home, I stood in the doorway, the silence thick and clean. No perfume, no lies, just the scent of oil and dust, honest smells. I poured myself black coffee, sat at my table, and looked at my wife's picture on the wall. They're gone, I whispered. For good. The cup was warm in my hand. The world outside buzzed with gossip, but in here, it was quiet. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and let the last words settle in my chest. Sometimes you don't need fire to burn someone down. You just need the truth.